today's section, we are going to discuss the topic ethnicity. Specifically, we are going to attempt to define what ethnicity is, the effect it has on society, as well as how the negatives of ethnicity can be contained. In the course of the delivery, we are going to intersperse this discussion with the concept of tribalism. And for this section, I want you to read pages 247 to page 264 of the Tradition and Change in Ghana by Nukunya. The topic of ethnicity or tribes in Ghana is very important because in Ghana there are so many ethnic groups in Ghana. In fact, linguistically we have over 40 different ethnic groups in Ghana. Ethnicity and the overly expression of ethnic allegiance has resulted in conflict and national instability in other regions. As a result of these negative consequences, a champon attempted to ban the use of the term ethnicity in any official duty. Unfortunately, he failed. He failed because in Ghana, even your name will give up where you come from. So if your name is Obeng, definitely you are an Akan. If your name is Lamte, you are a Gan. If your name is Kweshiga, nobody needs to ask you where you come from. You are Neve. And if your name is Yakubu, for most people, you come from at least one of the three regions in Ghana. There has been countries that have been plunged into war as a result of war. That there are examples of Rwanda where the Hutus and the Tutsis have to fight over, and that resulted in the death of over 3,000 people. In Nigeria, they had their own share. In Ethiopia, in Kenya, there have also been such cases. Even in Ghana, there have been such issues. So, for example, we remember the Kokumba and the Nanumba War. We have the Kusasis and the Mamprusis. In the Volta region, we have had that of the Alavanyo and the Nkonya people. Beyond that, there have even been wars that have risen as a result from the same ethnic group. So the typical one that happened in the 2000s was the Abudus and the Andanis. So if all these are the negatives, what is an ethnic group? An ethnic group is defined as an aggregation of people who claim direct ancestry from a common ancestor or ancestress, whether real or putative. We say real or putative because some of these ethnic groups actually do not and cannot tell us who actually their ancestor is. So, for example, the Bunus claim that they came from a Ho. How do you identify the Ho? Which Ho? How can a Ho give birth to a set of people? Right? Some are able to link and trace the ancestor to a particular person. And that is why we accept both, whether it is real or it is putative. Now, what is common about people who claim to be of the same ethnic group is that they have a common history of origin. They usually have a common destiny. They have common aspiration. They have a common language. And same cultural traits. As a result of the complexity and the difficulties, some analysts will just say that an ethnic group is a group of people who speak the same language. Simply. And one other thing about ethnic group is that they have what we refer to as the strong in-group loyalty. And so the person might not know you, but because you claim to come from the same ethnic group that he comes from, he immediately assumes that you are with him. And then he will rise to your defense or give you certain favors simply because you come from that ethnic group. It always raises what we refer to as sentimental attachment to one's own group. and its trait. Now let's quickly jump to the other concept, tribalism. Tribalism is the consciousness of being different as a group and an evaluation of the other groups in terms of the standard of one's own group. So tribalism is a situation where one usually feels that his values should be the standard in assessing others. And when anybody who fails to meet his standard is said to be inferior. Right? So if I am Ever or I am an Akan, and we have a way of doing our things, if you are a Kusasi, if you are an Adangbe, then I want to understand an Adangbe using an Akan or an Ever values. And because we all have different ways, there's always the tendency that you cannot satisfy my standard because our values and our cultures are the same. That is what broadly we refer to as ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is the situation where people uses their values as the center of the world, on the basis of which they will assess and grade and evaluate your performance. There are major ethnic groups in Ghana, and these are, according to the 2010 population census, these are the distribution. So, for example, the Akans are the majority with 47.5% of the population. The Ghana Dangbes are 7.4%. The Evers are 13.9%, almost 14%. The Guans are 3.7%. The Gulma and the Moldagbani, the Grusis and the Mandays, as it follows. Why are sociologists interested in studying ethnicity? If it has been a basis for conflict, it has been a basis for national instability. We are interested in studying ethnicity because it is the potential source of disintegration. And if you want to avoid any situation, then you ought to understand it. Right? So we want to understand what makes people do what they do. What makes them think of the kind of things that they think about themselves. And so sociologists are very much interested in that. Again, it gives us an understanding of how people relate to each other. And if I understand you better, then obviously I'm going to relate with you better. Again, when we are able to understand them, then we can put in measures by which we can then foster integration and at the same time avoid disintegration. The term tribe has historically been looked at negatively. So, for example, the Concise Oxford Dictionary in 1979 described a tribe as a group of primitive class. A very terrible term to be used. Very denigrating term. As a group of primitive class under a recognized chief, and usually claiming a common ancestor. As a result of these, in today's literature, you hardly find people trying to associate their group or identify their group as a tribe. They will rather go with what? Ethnic group rather than a tribal group. But the point really is that any time the term tribe is used or ethnic group, it really arouses emotional. There's always a stigma, and then it arouses some emotions. Right? So nobody wants to be said to be, for example, a tribalist. Even if the person is. That is, if the person always wants to push a particular ethnic agenda, they will not openly say so. Because the general perception is that it is not the smartest thing to do. So politicians will never want to accept it. Intellectuals will never want to assess it. According to Asimin, Ordinarily, Ghanaians will coexist and do all manner of things. They will forget about their individual differences if they perceive a common enemy, and they will come and they will do that. They fight the common enemy. He gives a typical example that when generally every Ghanaian felt that it was time to do away with colonialism, people forgot whether they were Ashantis or they were Akans or they were Fantis or they were Evers. They all mobilized themselves together. And then they got rid of the colonial masters. The issue of tribe will always surface when there's a time to share the goodies, or what Asimin refers to as the national cake. After the success, how do we share the cake? It is usually when these things ought to be done that people then begin to draw the ethnic lines. So political parties will fight, bring all people on board. When it is time to share positions, then people will go to do all that. And so the 1992 Constitution recognized that and said that in public appointment, the state should consciously ensure that there's regional balance. And I'm sure the framers of the law were smart, because there was no way you could have had ethnic balance with these over 40 different ethnic groups, right? So they would rather emphasize on region, so make sure that people feel a sense of belonging, so that when there's somebody coming from my region, I feel like my needs have been catered for. There's been a lot of negative effects anytime people want to make their ethnic group or their tribe as the center of the world. But before I do this discussion, Asimin in the same work, 1981, asserts that anytime a term is associated with ism, that is ISM, immediately that word assumes a status of religion, where people then tend to be very sentimental and devoted towards it. And on that basis, people begin to work and respond to it without necessarily being very rational. Now, the negative effects of tribalism. It usually impacts very negatively on the bureaucratic procedure. Chronism, nepotism. Because you come from that part of the world, I'm going to deny you certain values, irrespective of the kind of qualifications or competencies that you possess. Similarly, people who do not actually qualify are made or are put into certain positions. And I hope you remember your discussion on bureaucracy. The issue about square pegs being in round hole and round hole being in square pegs. Right? So the whole idea is that anytime tribes, ethnicity takes the center page of our lives, the concept of bureaucracy get compromised. People are no longer appointed on the basis of their values or their competencies or skills or achievement, but simply because they have an ascribed status of having come from this part of the world or the other one. The other point is that people then begin to perceive all people from a particular group as possessing the same values and skills. That's what we refer to as stereotyping. And I'm sure in your small communities or whatever, you have a general perception about almost every ethnic group. So when you say, oh, this guy, yeah, that is why he's a Ga. Oh, this man, that is why he's an Eve. Oh, that is why he's an Akan. Why? Simply because you might have had an experience with a Ga, an Eve, a Dangbe, and all that. And on that basis, you generalized. And you begin to think that every other person behaves and thinks in the same way. Once again, yes, there are issues when people get overly concerned about where they come from. But there's also another value that comes with it. The first one had to do with the fact that it serves certain purposes. That's what we call the tribal associations or the regional associations. So sometimes people are quick to offer services. And in the same way, they also deny certain services. in one of the classical work that was done by in the early 1950s, it focused on tribal associations. And people were quick. So the tribal association then became haven to people who moved from smaller communities. So they come to Accra, they go to Kumasi. And the tribal people or members of his tribe or his ethnic group were immediately willing to render certain services to him. They will help you find a place of accommodation. They will help you find a place to work, and even help you to settle into the new society. By that process, it helps you to avoid the challenges of culture shock, which ordinarily people will have experienced anytime they get into a new community. Now, let's look at how the challenges and the problems of tribalism can be contained. Abochi gives us a number of suggestions. Let's quickly go through at least 5 of them. One of his suggestions is that there should be a deliberate sharing of common space. And I think in Ghana, we have attempted at doing this with some success. So, for example, when you are taken to the boarding house for your secondary education, there's a likelihood that you will not share a dormitory with only people from your ethnic group. And the whole idea is that the more you engage with different set of people, you begin to understand them better. So there should be an attempt at making sure that people are strategically distributed so they will understand each other. Again, there should also be an attempt to encourage inter-ethnic marriages. So you marry, if wherever you marry a Gan, and the whole idea is that then you begin to understand the Gans better. And the Gans will begin to understand the Evers better. And because of that, then it makes the differences a bit blur. And then one of the things, and the law, the constitution has already resolved that, is that no political party can be formed on an ethnic line or a tribal line. And so before a political party is actually registered in Ghana, it has to have offices, or members forming the party must come from at least 2/3 of the districts in Ghana. Again, people who are seen to be working on the basis of where one comes from should be severely punished. The last but one is to also abolish the Zongos. I have my doubt if that is going to work, especially when political parties are thinking of establishing developing funds to develop these Zongos. And he talks about abolishing the Zongos because the Zongos have become an enclave, an ethnic enclave for people from certain places. And the whole idea is that the more you associate with yourselves without dealing with the other group, then you strengthen your individual perspective rather than shedding off your individual perspective and embracing the Ghanaian perspective. The last suggestion that Abochi put up is the fact that we should be able to choose a common language in Ghana and make it an official language. And his understanding is that if we do that, and because everybody speaks that particular language, that particular language will become a rallying point where everybody begins to understand each other. Because we are forced to speak English, or because we speak English as our official language, it entrenches the individual ethnic-based languages. And it makes it very difficult for us to relate with ourselves. But if there's a common language that every Ghanaian is speaking aside English, which is a native language, then people will be able to speak that. And so long as we speak that language, we are likely to see ourselves as one group of people. Thank you for this section, and I hope to meet you next week for the last but 2 sections.